Hello, KFNW fans. Marvin Forte here. Thanks to all the folks who showed up at the KFNW banquet on Saturday. We had about 60 people in attendance, and I reviewed highlights of the 2024 season and some of the changes we have in store for 2025, including a tentative schedule. Following is a portion of that presentation. First of all, thank you. KFNW could not exist without all of our angler members. Thanks to our tournament directors, Chris Bordas, Matthew Burdick, and Jim Davis. Our assistant directors, William Eschleman, Patrick Kelly, Kagan Pankratz, Josh Ruffcorn, and Skylar Talbot. And we must thank our presenting sponsors, Rogue Ales and Spirits, Diamond Parking and Self-Storage, Next Adventure, and Native Watercraft. And last but not least, all of our additional sponsors, Discount Tackle, Snake River Lockers, Ducket Fishing, Dakota Lithium, NRS, Les Schwab Tires, Boggs Footwear, Ego Fishing, Shelta, Yakima, Yak Attack, Dry Creek Outfitters, Bending Branches, Three Rivers Tackle, RoboHawk, ZR Custom Tackle, PNW Bass Candy, Bunker Baits, and Kayak Cushion. All right, so over the past 6 years that we've been doing this, we've been taking notes and talking about it at the end of the season and trying to improve. And this year, when we reviewed the last 6 years and specifically our online challenges, this is what we came up with. Throughout the season, our participation seems to trend down. The first few months, we get a lot of anglers that'll sign up and fish. And then as the season goes on, we get less and less that will sign up and participate. In a similar fashion, we have the same thing throughout the years. The first few years, participation seems to be up. We get a lot of people signing up and fishing. And then after a couple of years, it starts to go down. And we think one of the big reasons this is happening is that throughout the years, every year, we have a few anglers usually dominate in all three divisions, which discourages others. It's usually people that can get out and fish more often, but not always. Sometimes it's just because they do well in the first couple of months and then other people feel like they can never catch up. With multiple online challenges, some fish have to be judged up to 5 times, and sometimes by multiple judges. For example, if somebody catches a fish on the Columbia River, they can submit that in the monthly for Oregon, let's say bronzeback, and then in the bronzeback for Washington the same month, in the season long for Oregon and for Washington, and in the KFNW season long. So that's 5 times that angler has submitted that fish, and it might need to be judged by 2 or 3 different judges depending on who's judging all of those different online challenges. Timely judging is always been tough for us because of the number of events and the number of fish people are uploading. And I noticed as I was going through and doing the citation counts this year, there were a lot of angler errors. There were fish that were submitted, good fish, citation size fish that were submitted in a monthly, but maybe not in the season long or vice versa. And I can only chalk that up to angler confusion because they have to upload them so many times. Also, every year we seem to have anglers that get disqualified and sometimes even banned in online challenges for various offenses. It's usually anglers that are new to us, that don't know the rules, haven't read the rules, and aren't paying attention to the rules. We'd like to cut down on that. Also, over the past 6 years, we looked at what some of the struggles we've had with tour events. Our tightly packed schedule forced anglers to choose which events to attend, including the West Coast Championship. We had limited options for schedule changes or adding other events. Occasionally we'd have 2 events on the same date. This year we had Siltgoose Lake and Lake Lowell on the same date in May because we have so few Saturdays open in May. Per division AOI scores were complicated by interdivisional events like 2024's Lake Wallula. This hurt anglers that might have finished high for their division at Lake Wallula, but they didn't finish high for the entire event. And so there was no real good way around that because we do allow people to come and fish other states and even to be in the AOI for that state as long as they fish enough events to do it. And we can't tell ahead of time who's going to fish enough events and who isn't. So it just made that really complicated. There was really no good way to do it. We had problems either way. Our schedule was a challenge for the directors and judges who run or judge our events. In 2024, we had 16 live events from April through September. That's 62% of the Saturdays during that season. And in 2021 and 2022, we had 18 live events. That's 69% of all the Saturdays. And because of the limited number of judges, assistant directors, and directors we have, most of the time, just about all of those folks were either going to an event to participate, going to an event to help run the event, or they were at home judging for us. Just a big time commitment for all those folks. Even with those struggles, KFNW anglers traveled more this year than in any previous year that KFNW has been in existence. Here's a few names that had the most live events in 2024. Jonathan Bush had 12 live events. Now that includes season kickoff openers. That also includes the West Coast Championship. Jonathan didn't make the Classic, so it didn't count the Classic, but he did 12 events. A heroic feat for anyone to drive to that many events over that period of time. Trey Potts had 10. He did make the Classic, so that counted for him, but he didn't go to the West Coast Championship. Same with Chris Williams and Ed French, who both made the Classic, but they did not go to the West Coast Championship. They had 9 and 8 events, respectively. Again, that's a lot of events for anybody to cover. So let's talk about some of our goals for 2025. What are we trying to achieve? And this is primarily talking about tour events. We want to grow per event participation. We really want to get our numbers up. We want to create a high-level experience on par with other larger series. We want to improve the angler experience, both online, at events, and at awards. We want to increase payout amounts. We want to increase opportunities for KFNW Kayak Bass Classic qualification. That's always been a challenge because it's been so difficult to get into the Classic. You had to win an event. And not everyone can do what Trey Potts and Garrett Harrison both did this year, where they went to another state, fished an event. In Trey's case, he didn't even pre-fish. He just went down there and fished the lower Umpqua with us down in Oregon. And he managed to win the event, and Garrett won up at Whatcom. It's challenging to do that, but those guys made it into the Classic because of that. We also want to do better reciprocation for our sponsors through marketing, advertising, and angler interactions. And we want to raise public awareness of KFNW through conventional media and social media. Some anglers have told me that they've run into other people in kayaks, in really nice fishing kayaks out there on the water, and they asked them if they knew about KFNW, and they didn't know about us. So that's something we've got to work on. All right, so now let's talk about what we're going to do in 2025 to try and address some of these challenges. Unfortunately, we couldn't find good solutions to fix many struggles we've had with the online challenges. As a result, we'll be discontinuing all monthly online challenges for 2025. We'll be discontinuing all divisional season longs for 2025. We will keep the KFNW season long, but it will no longer be an open, and we'll pay out the top 15% of anglers. We should have more anglers in it, and we will really spread out those payments over the top 15%. Annual membership will be required to fish in the KFNW season long, since it'll no longer be an open. Anglers will no longer have a path to qualify for the Classic through any online challenges. I know that's a tough one for some. I know there are people every year who have qualified that way and would not have qualified any other way. And I hate to do that to them, but at the same time, our committee talked about it and hashed over this issue, and we decided that it was really the most fair, since the Classic is a live event. It's a 2-day live event. We wanted to be sure that the way people qualified was by fishing a live event. Anglers will be eligible for citation pins in the KFNW season long, and of course they'll be eligible in the live tour events as well. They won't be eligible in any opens like the season kickoff. We'll likely schedule some one-off pick your day type online challenges during the season. So something like the Charity Fishathon, the Double Trouble Team online challenge, which is always a popular one, maybe Pond Hopper or River Rat, which will encourage people to go to some places that they might not be fishing otherwise. Okay, so some of the changes we have in store for you on tour events. We're going to pull off bigger and better events. We're going to increase payouts and consolidate events to grow per event participation. We're going to improve angler experience with improved hardware, audio, video, and multimedia. We're going to improve public exposure with improved social media, video, and graphics. We're going to have fewer events to do all of those things. To address the tour event struggles and goals, we're going for a quality over quantity solution. All three divisions will function more like one regional series for 2025. Think Hobie BOS or Bassmaster Kayak Series. Those events cover a large area from the Northeast all the way to the Southeast and over through Texas. That's where most of those tournaments are held. And the household name anglers, they will travel and fish all of those events. But the local hobbyists and folks who just really like to compete, they'll do the events that are closer to them. They might not do all the events during the season. Both of those series have about 6 or 7 events per year. These changes will result in approximately 1 event per month between all 3 states. These changes will allow us to move dates and locations for permitting without affecting the entire schedule. Whenever we had a change like that, it was really tough to make the schedule work. One event would cascade through the whole season and cause a lot of changes, which I know was really tough for people if they had already put in for time off. Okay, here it comes. This is the tentative schedule. Before I show it to you, we will try to keep all of these dates the same as much as we possibly can, but the locations are definitely subject to change. And if we have to, we'll change a date, but we're going to try and keep the dates. Here it comes. Okay, so we start off in April with the season kickoff opens. I'm looking at probably doing Black Canyon Reservoir in Idaho, Dorena Reservoir in Oregon, and American Lake in Washington. And I'm open to doing something up in the Coeur d'Alene, Spokane area, since it would be a long travel for any of the anglers we have up there to go to these other 3 events. I'll just need a little bit of help. I'll need a volunteer or 2 that can help us get that event off the ground in the morning, pair up the teams, and get us the information for editing Tourney X so that the teams are set up. You'll notice that those events are all on the same date. That's the first time we've ever done that. And we think that's going to work really well for the season kickoffs because people are going to stay closer to home anyway. They're not going to expect to travel to multiple season kickoffs. Jonathan Bush did that this year. He hit a couple of those season kickoffs, but generally that does not happen. So we think that'll work out really well, and it really helps keep our schedule more simple and clean. I'm sure you've already looked ahead, and you can see in April, we've got 10 Mile Lakes in Oregon. And you'll notice that's also a West Coast Championship qualifier. Then in May, we've got Tour Event 2, and we'll combine that with the Native No Limit Big Bass Power Hour. We looked at doing the Native No Limit as a separate event, but the vote was slightly in favor of combining them, which also helps clean up the schedule. Next, in June, we've got Dworshack Reservoir. And we're thinking about doing that as a 2-day event. Some of the folks in Idaho were really keen to do a 2-day event the last year or 2, but it just didn't work very well because of our divisions, because we had we wanted to keep each division really equal. And so having a 2-day event in one state and not doing a 2-day event in both the other states was a bit of a challenge. But with this new schedule where we're sort of consolidating everything more, it's less of an issue. So we'd like to look at that. We'll put it to the members, and we'll also ask the members if they would prefer a Friday, Saturday, or a Saturday, Sunday. That one is also a West Coast Championship qualifier. You'll note that we skipped May for a West Coast Championship qualifier. We did that for a couple of reasons. One, because it's combined with the Native No Limit already anyway, so it's kind of a bigger event to begin with. And two, we really wanted to separate these qualifiers into 3 individual state events. So that brings us to July and Lake Whatcom, which is also a West Coast Championship qualifier. Then in August, we'll go to the Upper Willamette River. Same section that we fished this year, and same one that we did for the Classic a couple of years ago. And it fished really well when we did the Classic a couple of years ago. So fingers crossed, hopefully it'll fish again well here. So here's a big change you'll notice right here that we were able to do because of the new schedule and everything being spread out a little bit more. There's 3 weeks between tour event number 5 on the Upper Willamette River and the West Coast Championship down in Clear Lake, California. The last few years, we've had a week between those, 2 weeks at most. So that was really challenging for somebody to go out and fish a tour event and then turn around the following week and go down to California and fish there. This gives you a lot more cushion in there to take the time off and get ready and go down there and pre-fish. Same thing after the West Coast Championship. We've got another 3 weeks or so between that event and Tour Event 6, which will be at CJ Strike Reservoir in Idaho. And then our last event of the year, of course, is the Kayak Bass Classic. We're going to do that on Potholes Reservoir in Washington. I think the date on that is going to be 10/18 to 19. That's because there were a couple of other bass boat tournaments that were already scheduled. Now, in the case of all of these locations, they're pending permits. I don't have approved permits from any of our 3 states yet. We've applied in 2 of the states. We can't even apply in the 3rd state yet. So they are subject to change, but we've done everything we can, and we're still doing everything we can to try and prevent any conflicts with those. All right, let's talk about some of the other changes we have in store. So for the Classic, with this new schedule and things being spread out a lot more, we're going to be able to give you more opportunities to make the Classic. The top 10% of all anglers competing in a tour event will qualify for the Classic. For example, if we have 60 anglers at a tour event, we'll qualify 6 anglers for the Classic. I expect the number of qualified anglers to increase from around 20. We usually get somewhere between 20 and 22 that actually fish the event. I think we'll be somewhere between 30 and 40. Again, if we have somewhere around 60 anglers at each event, 50 to 60 anglers, that's going to get us 30 to 36 qualified anglers via tour events. Of course, there'll be some duplicates in there, but as always, we do not do roll downs for the Classic. We want you to compete and make it in by qualifying. You're not going to roll it down if somebody qualifies twice. Angler of the Year and Rookie of the Year. There'll be no more state AOIs or ROIs, KFNW only. Those divisions will still exist. I didn't mention that, but that's an important factor. IKBF will still exist, OKBF and WKBF. And when we do a tour event in that state, it'll be a KFNW event in association with IKBF, in association with OKBF. So those will still exist, and that's partly because down the road in the future, we don't know exactly what's going to happen. If we need to make some adjustments after we see how things go this year, we will. AOI will be scored based on the angler's best 4 out of 6 events. We're going to talk about distance and time and travel in just a minute, but this is in there for that reason. If you only fish 4 events, the 4 events that are closest to you, let's say, whichever part of the Pacific Northwest you live, you'll still have a shot at qualifying for ROI or AOI. If you miss 3 events, no, you won't be able to. If you only have 3 events, you won't have enough to do it. But at the same time, that's fine. If somebody only wants to fish the 1 or 2 or 3 events that are closest to them, that's great. We want to encourage them to do it. But if they want to put in the time and travel to have a chance at AOI or ROI, we're going to give them a chance to do that, and we'll still do it without them having to travel to some of the furthest locations in our schedule unless they really want to. And I think what we'll do is the top 5 anglers in the Angler of the Year race will qualify for the Kayak Bass Classic. Probably all of those people will have already qualified by being in the top 10% of all those other events. I guess theoretically it's possible that they wouldn't have, so we're putting this in there to catch them, but I think they probably will. All right, this is the exciting stuff. Let's talk about fees and payouts. Big Bass boosts will go from 100 to 250 per tour event this year. With fewer tour events, we're able to take that money and consolidate and pool it so that it's a bigger payout amount. This is specifically the boosts that we give. So they've been gift certificates. We had 3 great tackle providers that have done that the past couple of years. Dry Creek Outfitters in Idaho, Three Rivers Tackle in Washington, and Discount Tackle in Oregon. So what we're going to try and do is line up sponsors, probably for gift certificates again, or codes. But there'll be 250 in addition to the side pot that is optional. The angler can buy in. Of course, if they don't buy in, then they don't qualify for the cash or for this boost. And we'll also look at potentially increasing that side pot buy-in amount. We changed it from 5 to 10 a couple of years ago, and we'll put that to the anglers and see where they want it to be. For the Classic, we had a pretty big buy-in because there was no entry fee, and it made for a really nice payout for big bass. We're going to keep membership at $60 for this year, and we're going to allow 1 tour event with a $30 single event membership. That's the same way we've done it for the past few years. If you're coming from California or Utah or somewhere else and you just want to fish one of our events, you can buy that $30 single event membership. And then if you decide you want to fish another event or the rest of the events, then you can pay a $30 upgrade to get that to an annual membership. We're going to up the entry fee to $100. It was $75 this year. We're going to $100. That will help us reach our payout goals, and that's still really a good value. It's less than any of these other big series that we've looked at. Everybody else is charging more in terms of entry fees. We don't want to price people out, but we do want to increase it as much as we can. With fewer events, your annual payout for entry fees will be very comparable. And especially if you were doing the onlines and the live tour events, well, that ended up being a lot more money than it's going to be with this $100 entry fee, even if you did all 6 events. With the increased entry fee and depending on sponsorship, here's what I think we're going to have for tour event payouts. Hold on to your socks. Even if we only have 30 anglers, which really almost all of our tour events this year, the last few years, have had 30 anglers. Idaho is our smallest division. There are fewer people over there, so they've occasionally dipped below 30, but they've been over 30 on events too, and Washington and Oregon almost always have at least 30 anglers. For that, we'd be looking at first place, $2,450, second place, $980, and third place, $735. One thing we're going to emphasize this year, we've done this for the past number of years now, but I think sometimes I find that people don't realize what we're doing. This event would be, at this payout would be 163% payout percentage. There are not very many series that do this. Most people are taking money out of the entry fees because there are expenses that it takes to run one of these. Of course, there's Tourney X and there's merchant fees that we have to pay. But then there's also lots of other costs involved in running a series like that. And our membership and the money that comes out of sponsorship helps to pay for some of that. Things like insurance and accounting and the hardware, awards, trophies, the big checks, all the banners and everything that we use to promote the event. Those all cost money. And that money has to come from somewhere. We do this 163% payout by going after cash. We get sponsors that help us with cash, and that helps us with those expenses, some of it, and some of it goes towards paying out the anglers. Most of it goes to paying out our anglers. At 50 anglers, we'd have $3,250 for first, $1,300 for second, $975 for third, $390 and $130 for fifth. So that fifth place, you'd basically get your entry fee back and a little bit of money. That would be 130% payout. The higher we go in terms of number of participating anglers, the lower that payout percentage gets, because then most of our money is coming from entry fees. The boosts are a fixed amount. The entry fees, of course, go up with the number of anglers. So somewhere around 100 anglers or so, we just barely start to dip below 100% payout, which again is far better than most kayak tournament series that you'll find out there. And at 70 anglers, which is sort of the sweet spot, I think if we can hit 50 anglers on average per event this year, that's good. We'll be in good shape. If we can hit 60 or 70, I'm going to be really happy. That's what I'm shooting for. And to do that, we really just need most of the local anglers that would have fished those events in that state, which is anywhere from 30 to 40 anglers usually. And then we just need another 10 or 15 coming from those other states. And if we can get even more than that, fantastic. Lake Wallula last year, we had 83. And if you remember, we had to change the date for that event. And if we could have kept the original date on Saturday, we were over 100. We had over 100 signed up for that event. But unfortunately, the weather ruined that for us. And mostly it was Idaho guys who just couldn't make it work to stay another day because they had a longer drive to get home. So they opted to go home and not make the event. But we only lost about 10 to 15% of the anglers who had signed up, which was fantastic because initially we thought we were going to lose 20 or 30%. But so here it is. At this 70 anglers, you can see these giant payouts. First place, $4,050. Second place, $1,620. Third place, $1,215. Fourth, $486. Fifth, $162, and down again to get those last three are going to get their entry fee back and their big bass fee, even if they paid into that. Pretty impressive. The Classic, I think for the first time in 2025, we're going to collect an entry fee. I really love that it hasn't had an entry fee. I think it's great. It's really cool that the people who've qualified for that can come and not have to pay an entry fee. But if we're attempting to get our payouts bigger, I don't see any way around it. You know, Hobie BOS just did their Tournament of Champions this past week, and their first place payout was something like $25,000. Just a huge payout. And I think the entry fee for that is big. It's $400, $500, something like that. We're not going to go that big, but we'll do likely at least $100 we'll do, and possibly up to $250. We'll probably talk to a lot of you about that and see where your comfort level is with it, and we'll make a decision about it. But that, accompanied by bigger sponsorship money that we're going to go after, I think we're looking at some really incredible payouts like this. First place, $5,000 to $10,000. Second place, $2,500 to $5,000. Third place, $1,500 to $2,500. That's 2 to 4 times as much as we have been paying for this event. So more paths to get in it, and the potential for winning a whole lot more money We think that's going to be really attractive to people and hopefully get them to fish as many events as we possibly can get them to do that they can swing. So let's look at a map. Here's what all these events look like. You can see what we've done, at least for this year, is we've really tried to spread it out very evenly as much as we can. It's difficult because we've got population centers in such widely different areas. So some people are going to have to travel more than others. It's unfortunate. It's just the way it is. But it'll be a little different every year too. For example, this year you'll see like down in the Medford or Ashland area of Oregon, there's really not an event very close to them this year. They're going to have to drive a little bit to get to a couple of the events. And same thing if we go over to, Twin Falls area of Idaho or Burley in Idaho, that area. We've got a few anglers out there, a handful of anglers out there that are great anglers. They're going to have to drive just a little more this season. But, next year that could be very different, and certainly certain years it will. All right, so here's some more info about that time and travel. There's a lot on this slide, so I'm going to give you a chance to look at it. You'll see across the top, I've got 3 areas in Idaho that a lot of our anglers live, 4 locations in Oregon, and 4 locations in Washington. And then I'm listing the number of miles one way. I want to be sure you notice that's a one-way travel mileage. And if you look at the left, the top left, you'll see we've got our 6 tour events and then the classic listed there. And then for all of those, I'm listing the 4 tour events that are closest to them. That's what that shaded area is in each section. And then on the lower left, you'll see what I've done is I've broken it down by, here's your 1 closest tour event to where you live. Here's your 2 closest tour events to where you live. And if you look at the 1s and the 2s, it's pretty good. They're pretty close. You can get to 2 events usually without a whole lot of driving. And then if we look at 4, which is that ROI, AOI qualification number, it's still reasonable. You're going to have to travel a little more. There's an event or 2 that you would have to travel, but you're going to have more time between events to do it. And then for those hardcore folks who want to get the best chance possible at AOI or ROI and they want to do 6 events, there's our totals along the bottom. You can see that, like I said, Twin Falls and Medford sort of have the biggest mileage and the biggest number of hours to get to those destinations. And the closest are Tri-Cities is definitely the closest because they're the most central. Tri-Cities is kind of right in the middle of our tri-state area. Portland is pretty close. Wenatchee is close. Seattle's not bad at all. It's mostly pretty close for them. All right, let's talk about some of the other changes that we're looking at. Probably not this year, but in the future. Eventually, I would love to move to an open series format and eliminate membership. We can't do that yet. The only way we could do that is by raising a lot more sponsorship money. And the membership fees that you folks pay, and the earlier you can pay them, well, you can pay them, from now before the season starts. That's the money we use for permits, for awards, for a lot of the stuff that we've got to do early on before the season starts. And we don't always have all the sponsorship money until a little bit later, until closer to the season or even during the season. So yeah, like I said, that would take a significant increase in sponsorship to replace those membership fees. Some other bodies of water we're considering for future events. This is not a complete list, but it's a list of some other places. And what you're going to find here is there are places that we haven't done events because they didn't really make sense with our old setup with the 3 divisions. So here we've got Alder Lake in Washington, Anderson Ranch, which we have done, Brownlee Reservoir. Let's talk about that. We tend to do that as an Idaho event, and we usually fish over on the Idaho side So we really haven't done anything over in Richland, Oregon, because it doesn't really make sense as an Oregon event, because everybody from Oregon would have to travel there. We don't have a big population center over there. We've only got a couple of people who live in Oregon over there, and they tend to fish the Idaho events because they're closer to Idaho. So this way we could do both, and we would probably do the awards on the Richland side, because there's a lot better Wi-Fi over there. Wi-Fi is or not even Wi-Fi, just regular cell service. Cell service is tough to get on that Idaho side, as the Idaho guys who fished over there know. Lake Cascade, which we've done before. Lake Coeur d'Alene would be up there in the Coeur d'Alene area. Coeur d'Alene Lake, Hayden Lake, and there's some other bodies of water up there that we would consider too. The Columbia River. We look at doing events in the Bonneville Pool, the Celilo Pool, Umatilla, and Wallula. We've done Umatilla and Wallula. Years ago we did the Bonneville Pool for Oregon. We haven't done the Celilo Pool, but any of those I would say we will probably get in the mix. Hayden Lake up near Coeur d'Alene. Lake Lowell in Idaho, which we did this year. Moses Lake, we have done that before, and that's a good one. It's close to potholes. A Soyuz Lake, of course, will have to be back there. It gets a little dicey with some of these, like a Soyuz. If we get, 75, 80 people, that's a lot for that lake. But we'll have to sort that out as we go. Owyhee Reservoir is another one that just didn't really make sense before. It's in Oregon, but it's close to the Boise, Idaho guys. So we could have held it there, but then I'd have to tell the Idaho people, you're going to have to get a fishing license for Oregon to come fish this event in Oregon, but it's an Idaho event. Well, that doesn't matter. If it's for all of KFNW, we could do it at Owyhee, and that would work really well. Prineville Reservoir, which we did this year. And here's a fun one. I've been in talks with James Snyder at IKBF about possibly doing a joint event with IKBF down at Shasta Lake in California, which is great because that's really pretty close for the people in Southern Oregon. For the Medford, Ashland, Roseburg people, it's not a far drive down to Shasta. And for those people in Washington and Idaho, it's worth the trip. It's a beautiful, fun lake to fish, lots of spotted bass and smallmouth and largemouth. We'd have to sort out the AOI stuff. We probably would do what we have done in the past, where I would only count KFNW people in that AOI count. Since they're a completely different organization, I don't think that's really a problem. Siltcoos Lake, which we did this year, and the Snake River, of course. There's that section in like the Lewiston area that's sort of between Idaho and Washington. That might be a good spot. The fish aren't quite as big there, so that might be a problem. But we'll see. Swan Falls, if it'll handle the number of anglers we have, and Lake Walcott, which we've done in that central eastern part of Idaho, and others, and I'm looking for suggestions on other places that you think we ought to fish. The thing about this change and the number of anglers and the fact that it's fewer events, it's going to push us to fish more premium bodies of water. We're not going to be fishing some of these smaller locations. We kind of had to before because we had so many events in each state. We didn't want to just have the same schedule every year. So we had to kind of pick and choose which places we could go each year. And sometimes it was tough, and we would end up at places that didn't fish as well, had lower quantity numbers or lower size numbers. And we're trying to give you guys the chance of catching the best fish and the most fish that you can. All right, let's talk about membership. You can sign up today for your 2025 KFNW membership, and you have multiple ways to save money. We've got a few early bird specials for you. For the first time ever, if you sign up this week, if you sign up through November 16th, 2024, I think at 11:59 I've got it set up, you're going to save $10. It'll only be $50 for you. In addition to that, if you sign up in November, you're going to get 6 chances before the season starts to win back your membership fee. If you buy your full membership in December, you'll get 3 chances to win back your membership fee. And if you get your full membership in January, you'll have one chance to win back your membership fee. That's because we'll do 3 winners at the end of November, 2 at the end of December, and 1 after January. We've done that for the past couple of years, and it's been a great way to get people to sign up early. Just go to kfnw.fish/join/. If you're not aware, you don't have to type in kayakfishingnorthwest.com. You can also type kfnw.fish. In addition to that, we've got hoodies in the works. They are at kfnw.fish/shop. They're supposed to be in this kind of magic blue color, which is a really good color. It goes with our KFNW logo really well. It's sort of a blue-green color, but the printer tells me they may not be able to get smalls and mediums, so I'm looking at that. I may have to change to a different sweatshirt or a slightly different color, but we'll see how that goes. And the price on that right now, I believe, is set at $49, $49.99. And again, as I refine exactly which hoodie it is and the prices, if I have to adjust it, I'll do partial refunds or let you know. If I don't think the price isn't going to go up. If anything, it'll go down a little bit. Of course, if you have any questions about any of this, please contact me directly, or you can contact Jim Davis or Matthew Burdick. Chris Bordis has rolled off as a tournament director this year. It was taking up too much of his time, and he changed jobs. So he's looking forward to participating as an angler, but he's no longer tournament director in Idaho. In that regard, I am looking for more assistance, and I'll do a post about that later. We need people to help us out a little bit more, and we've got small tasks and big tasks, so don't feel like it's going to be too much of a time commitment for you, because there's some things we could ask you to do that are easy that you could do. But we are looking for people in all 3 states to potentially help us going forward. Thanks so much for paying attention and going through this. I'll post more about the schedule, and the schedule will be on the website and on TourneyX. TourneyX will have to wait until the permits are approved. I don't want to go in and change those, but we'll have them on the website here in the next couple of days. Thanks again. See you soon.